Hello and welcome to Byjus Exam Prep IAS. A very warm good morning to everyone. I hope all of you are doing absolutely fine. I welcome you all to today's session on the Hindu Newspaper Analysis. Without any further wait, let's see what are the news stories that we have taken up for today's discussion. So a lot of news in this newspaper for today. First, we'll be discussing about what is happening in Bihar. As expected, after the caste survey in Bihar, the Bihar government has passed the bill under which they are now increasing the reservation in the state jobs. They are trying to increase the reservation from existing 50% to 65% and on top of that 10% EWS reservation. Then we'll be discussing about an article about India's economic success. There have been a lot of debate about how India's growth might seem to be high, but it is at the back of low base. That is, the pandemic year reduced India's base, and that is why we see a higher growth number. But this article says that you have to look at the positives as well, the positive story that India's growth story shows. Then there's an article, a kind of a debate, an interview again about what Mr. Narayan Murthy had said. He had said in an interview just a few days back, as you would know, that Indian youth should work at least 70 hours in a week for nation building. Then we'll be discussing about the railway link between Agartala and Akhaura in Bangladesh that was very recently inaugurated virtually by the Prime Minister of India and the Prime Minister of Bangladesh. We did discuss this in slight bit when it was inaugurated on the 1st of November. Now we'll be discussing it in a lot more detail. Then there's an article about the problem of deep fakes. As you know, deep fake videos of some celebrities have been making rounds on the social media. So the government has issued strict directives against the use of deep fakes. Then from the prelims exam point of view, we have news stories. First, the ethics panel in the Lok Sabha has concluded its investigation. They have recommended disqualification of the member of parliament, it is Moitra, from the Lok Sabha. Then Nagaland finally has given acceptance to 33% quota in the urban local body, that is the municipal elections. They did not have this quota so far. And in the end, the 2+2 dialogue between India and the US is now commencing with the American counterparts of India, that is the defense and the foreign ministers, coming to India to hold these talks. Let's start with the very first topic. The first news from the front page of the Hindu newspaper is from Bihar. Bihar government, as you know, recently had released its data about the Bihar caste survey. The story is that many politicians in India, especially Nitish Kumar, they had been demanding that the census in India should be caste based. We should get exact caste based numbers so that reservation policies, other policies of the government can be formed accordingly. But the center government had denied this demand. They had said that no, there is no need to have a caste-based census. So the Bihar government went ahead, did their own survey. Again, please remember, Bihar government called it a survey, not a census. The reason being, census can be conducted by the central government only. Since Bihar was doing it, so they called it, and they used a loophole, they called it a caste-based survey. They wanted to know the exact numbers of different castes so that caste-based reservation can be given, mostly how it can be increased. Because as you know, the Supreme Court has given a limit that if there are no exceptional circumstances, then the reservation in total should not exceed 50%. But because these governments, including Bihar, want to increase reservation even further, they want to have it on the back of data so that they can defend this in the Supreme Court. So the caste-based data that had come out from Bihar, on the basis of which the Bihar Legislative Assembly now has passed this bill, under which they have increased the reservation. Now, where reservation has been increased and how much has been increased, let's see that. For extremely backward classes, for EBC, reservation earlier used to be 18%, it has been increased to 25% now. For backward classes, reservation has been increased from 12 to 18%. For scheduled castes, increased from 16% to 20%. For scheduled tribes, increased from 1% to 2%. And one reservation quota that has been taken away is a backward class women quota. So the backward class women quota has been scrapped while all these reservations have increased. In total now, these caste-based reservations are 65%, 25 in 2045 and this 20%, plus 10% EWS reservation. So in total, this makes up 75% reservation. As you can see, this is way beyond the Supreme Court's prescribed limit of 50%. So it is expected that some people would challenge this in the Supreme Court. Would the Supreme Court allow this or not? This remains to be seen. The caste-based survey that the Bihar government had released on the 2nd of October on the occasion of Gandhi Jayanti had said that there are 36% extremely backward classes in Bihar, while 27% population of Bihar comprises of backward classes. Together, they make up about 63% of the state's population, so they deserve more reservation as compared to what has already been given to them. We have discussed already. These are the major findings of the survey that came out in case of Bihar. Now, do you have to remember these? No. Unless you are preparing for the Bihar PCS examination, I would not suggest you to remember the exact number, the exact outcome of this survey. On the other hand, if you are focusing on Bihar-based exam, yes, do read about it in a lot more detail. From the UPSC point of view, we are much more focused on the idea of reservation, on the idea of what the Supreme Court had said in the past, and the 50% limit that the Supreme Court had put. Now, where did this idea actually come in? Many people, and most people would know, that it was in the Indira Sahni case 1992 that the Supreme Court said there should be a 50% limit on reservation. But the reality is the Supreme Court actually gave this limit before that. It was actually in 1962 in a case called M.R. Balaji versus the state of Mysore, where the state of Mysore had given a lot more reservation. It was in the 60s. And this is when the Supreme Court had said that you cannot give so much reservation. It has to be limited within 50%. It was then reiterated by the Supreme Court in the Indira Sahni case that 50% has to be the limit. If there are some exceptional circumstances, then you can go beyond the 50% limit. And the reality is many states have used that excuse of exceptional circumstances and they have gone beyond the 50% limit. This is not just one or two, there are multiple states that have done this in the past. For example, Tamil Nadu's example is very famous. They have 69% reservation. Haryana, Chhattisgarh, Telangana, Maharashtra, Rajasthan. So there are multiple states that have actually passed laws which kind of bypass the 50% limit. The Supreme Court had clearly said that it has to be only under exceptional circumstances. So the Supreme Court mainly decides on a case-to-case basis whether this kind of a reservation, this kind of an exception should be allowed or not. Now the reality is, this is just a verdict of the Supreme Court. The 50% limit is not a law that is written anywhere. It's a verdict of the Supreme Court that has a force of a law. But under exceptional circumstances, again, it can be increased even further. The point of contention here is, there is no definition of what are exceptional circumstances. There is no definition of when would it be allowed and when would it not be permitted. The next article here is written to highlight some of the achievements, accomplishments of the current government on the economic front. Whenever you read an article in the Hindu newspaper, usually about India's economy and the growth of economy, most of those articles are critical of the government. Most of those articles point out towards the fact that India's stature as a world's fastest growing large economy is usually an eyewash. This is not a reality because India's per capita income is very low and we are still extremely poor. However, this article written by 4 people together, and if you can see their introductions, one who is a chief economic advisor to the finance ministry, second, senior advisor to the Ministry of Finance, third, Indian Economic Service Officer in the Ministry of Finance. So 3 are bureaucrats and 4 director of the Delhi School of Economics. So out of the 4 authors, 3 work for the government. So what they are doing is they are presenting the government's point of view. There's nothing wrong in that. The reason why you read editorials, the reason why you read these opinion articles is so that you can form your opinion on the basis of different opinions given by people. So there are a lot of columnists that talk about the negative aspect of our economic growth, and now this article is focusing on the positive aspect of it because you need pointers from both the sides. So what exactly are they saying? They are saying that continuously year on year, we see the IMF saying that India is the fastest growing major economy in the world. post the COVID-19 crisis in financial year 23, India grew at 7.2% year on year. When you say year on year, by the way, it means that, for example, you compare one year with the other year. You don't really compare one or very long time periods. India is projected to grow at 6.3% in the ongoing financial year, which makes India the fastest growing major economy. Now, there is no proper definition of the word major. It's not that beyond a certain level you become a major economy. Mainly major economies are those who do not have a very small base. Thus, when they grow at, let's say, 7% or 8%, it's not because of very small base. It is because of the economic changes that have taken place. The article also points out India right now is the world's fifth largest economy and on the path to become the third largest economy by 2027. Means there has to be something right that the government and the country is doing as a whole. You cannot just keep criticizing the government and the entire economy. The author says that we cannot ignore the fact that the COVID-19 crisis was once in a lifetime crisis that no one saw coming. So you cannot blame the government for that. The authors say that the distractors or the people who want to criticize the government, they want us to forget that something like COVID-19 happened. But you cannot forget that. You have to give the benefit of the doubt to the government. You have to give them this leverage that even in the COVID-19 crisis, yes, we saw a great decline in our growth, but we picked up growth as soon as COVID-19 crisis ended. This has not happened with many countries around the world. A lot of nations, including developed nations, are still struggling to pick up the growth. That means there has to be something right that the government has done. Now, what is it that the government has done? So now in this article, they have basically elaborated on the government's important decisions since 2014. Not in the COVID crisis or after that, but since 2014, since this government has been working. First, there has been liberalization of the economy, means a lot more opportunities for the private sector to come in, a lot more opportunities for government to now sell their enterprises to have private participation. We have seen a lot of enterprises being either sold to the government or there has been some disinvestment. Second, the government usually, whenever they want to tell about their achievements, tells about the insolvency and bankruptcy code, which is a big achievement of the government. This has allowed the companies who are not working well, allowed the companies who are going bankrupt to follow a proper procedure so that the money that is given to these companies by the banks does not just get dissolved. At least some money can come back in a proper procedure that has been written properly in this IBC, that is the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. It has lowered the NPAs, non-performing assets of the banks. It has also given a boost to the private investment so that they can be sure that their investment will not go bad. Then the government's move of demonetization, although it has been criticized by many, but these authors are saying that this was a move that reduced black money into the market. It increased taxpayers' confidence. They gave many more taxes. GST is increasing year on year. We have higher revenues collection in the form of the GST. We also see duplicate taxes being cut down. The concept of tax on tax has been removed now. India has also reduced its corporate tax. It reduced in 2019 to bring it at one of the lowest levels in the entire world. This again is a confidence booster for the private economy. Apart from that, the government has also been spending a lot of money on capital expenditure that you call as capex. Capital expenditure basically means the money government is spending to build hard long-term infrastructure. For example, it can be roads, it can be railways, it can be bridges, flyovers, etc., highways. All of these are capital expenditures. These are those expenditures that create a lot of jobs, number one, and also they help the businesses in the long run to reduce their cost of transportation. For example, if you look at the numbers, from 1.6% of the GDP in financial year 2019, the government increased its capital expenditure to 2.7% in financial year 2023. This year, the government is trying to increase it even further. The government is planning to spend 3.3% of its GDP in financial year 2024 just on capital expenditure. Again, capital expenditure increment is a big sign that the government is investing in making the businesses better, in allowing the businesses to achieve their full potential. Then the authors say that look at the numbers in terms of poverty and rural welfare. There are multiple reports that show that poverty has declined considerably in India. They take the help of the recently released Niti Aayog report on the multidimensional poverty. Niti Aayog report had said that 13.5 crore Indians have come out of multidimensional poverty from 2015 to 2021. Now, do you see something interesting here? The year that is taken here is an year where you will not see the complete impact of COVID-19 crisis. So COVID-19 crisis pushed a lot of people back into poverty. So the number that is taken here, this range, this is a range where the full impact of COVID-19 crisis might not be visible. So again, these are some of the things that government agencies do. If, for example, the government agency has been given the mandate to make us look good, they will keep those numbers in place where they think that the number shows a positive turn. Because again, a lot of people were pushed back into poverty during the COVID-19 crisis. The report also says that if you look at the National Family Health Survey, it also shows there has been a considerable improvement in the quality of life in the rural areas. Access to electricity has improved. Many more people have drinking water under government schemes such as the Jal Jeevan Mission. There have been better health coverage given to people under schemes such as Ayushman Bharat. We have much better cropping patterns. There has been abundance of fruits and vegetables in the food basket. People are not just depending on grains, which augurs well for their health and for the economy also in the long run. So all these are the positive pointers that the article here is trying to show from the side of the government. Now, the article focuses and gives an example of Niti Aayog's recently released report on the multidimensional poverty index. This report was released just about a month back. So I wanted to get you to revise this once again. Niti Aayog's report on multidimensional poverty index shows a lot of very positive signs on how our economy is moving, on how the general well-being of the people is. For example, the report says that 13.5 crore people have come out of multidimensional poverty. There has been a steep decline in poverty headcount ratio. In fact, there has been a reduction in incidence of poverty in the urban areas and in rural areas in both of these. The steepest decline in poverty has been seen in UP, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, Odisha and Rajasthan. Apart from that, the report also says there has been considerable improvement in nutrition, years of schooling, sanitation availability, cooking fuel, etc. All of these are examples that you can quote in the mains examination if you're trying to write about how the situation in the rural areas especially has evolved. Then if you see how the number of people in the urban versus rural areas are still poor, again the proportion is declining. We have more people in poverty in the rural areas obviously as compared to the urban areas. If you see the access to cooking fuel, etc., access to housing, nutrition, even maternal health has been improving. So all of these has been a good way forward for the government to show for its efforts in the past few years, especially starting 2015 onwards. The report also talks about nutrition. It talks about the differences between National Family Health Survey number 4 and 5, how the states have improved considerably with providing much better nutritious food to the children to ensure that the problems such as stunting, such as wasting, etc., these numbers get much better. The next article is back on the debate that India is still having after the statement given by Infosys founder Mr. Narayan Murthy, where he suggested that the youth in India, for the purpose of nation building, should work for at least 70 hours a week. We discussed this earlier as well. If you remember, just a couple of days we had a discussion where the author was saying that if India was to enforce the youth to work for 70 hours a week, we would be going against the standards set by the ILO, that is the International Labour Organization, so we must not do that. here, this article today is presenting 2 points of view. So it's a kind of an interview that has been recorded with 2 people. Now, there are 2 people who are basically giving their points of view about whether or not we should take this advice of 70 hours a week seriously or not. So I'll just give you a gist of the 2 views that have been given. Who has given these views, that's not really important for you. It's just important for you to know both sides of the story so that you can make up your own mind. So the first view is to support Mr. Narayan Murthy and what he said. Basically, again reminding you in case you did not see his interview, when Mr. Narayan Murthy was giving his interview, basically he was referring to the fact that after the Second World War had ended, most of the European economies and Japan, all these economies were destroyed. So in order to rebuild their economy, the youth in the country, the leaders in the country decided that we have to work extra hours, we have to work extra hard in order to make sure that we do not lag behind and the process of nation building basically fastens up. So Mr. Narayan Murthy had said that the same has to be the mindset of the Indian youth. They should not restrict themselves to 8 hours a day, 9 hours a day because this is what their office job is. They should stretch themselves. They should say that for the purpose of nation building, I will work at least 70 hours a week. That was his context. So now in support of this, what the first author is saying, he is saying that India right now, if you look, India is in a very crucial position. We all have discussed about demographic dividend. India is one of the youngest countries in the world right now, average age of close to 28.5 years. After some years, India will also turn into an older country where our average age will increase considerably. Countries such as Japan, where average age is above 40, Italy, etc., they have a problem of not enough people in the working age group. So the author says that if you try and understand what Mr. Murthy was saying, what he was saying that India is in such a point in its history that if today we do not work extra hours, we will miss this bus of demographic dividend. And in the next 10, 12, 15 years, after that, even if we work harder, it would not really have the kind of impact on our economy that it should have. So right now is the appropriate time to put in extra hours. This is number one. He says that if you look at the example of Germany, Japan, etc., all of them, when they were actually industrializing, when they were rebuilding their economy, worked extra hours. For example, Germany during its industrial revolution worked 40 to 50% more. South Korea in 1980s worked 30 to 33% more. So it's not to say that what Mr. Murthy is suggesting is out of the picture. What he's suggesting is something that has been done in many other countries. On an average, Indians in 1990s to late 2020s work for 6 to 7 hours a day on average. If you compare this with Germany, South Korea, etc., it is much, much, much lower. That is what he was saying. The second supporting argument that the author gives in support of Mr. Murthy is number of working hours are different for different industries. Not in every industry can you work for 70 hours. I'll give you a real example of myself. So for example, I am a teacher. If you count my working hours by the number of hours that I am teaching, obviously I cannot teach 70 hours in a week. Because again, what you teach, for example, if I am teaching or if I am discussing this session with you for 1 hour, 1.5 hours, it takes a couple of hours, 3 hours of doing the homework, of reading this, understanding this, researching this. So if you actually just count 1 hour as the output and assume that I have only worked for 1 hour, that will not do justice and that will never allow me to work for 70 hours in a week. So again, it depends on profession to profession. For example, again take an example of, let's say, a pilot. You cannot expect a pilot to fly a plane for 8 to 9 hours a day because someone is doing their job 8 to 9 hours a day. 8 to 9 hours a day sitting on the desk, coding may be very different, but 8 to 9 hours of continuous teaching or 8 to 9 hours of flying the plane is very different. So you cannot compare the same. So again, the author is saying that you cannot just say that everyone should work for 20 or for 70 hours a week. This is not what Mr. Murthy had meant. What he was focusing on was that you should go beyond what is expected of you. Don't just do the basic minimum stuff. Go beyond this and help and give a helping hand to the process of nation building at large. He also says that if you compare productivity in India with the developed nations, in India, we do not have a very high productivity. We do not have a lot of automation. So for the same output that India has to do as compared to Germany or Japan, India has to work harder. Because the same output can be had in Germany, Japan or European country with the help of automation, with the help of machines. This is where we are also lagging. Yes, we should invest more, but for the time being, since or till the time that the investment does not come in, Indians do need to go that extra mile. This is what the author is suggesting. These are the points in support of Mr. Murthy. Now let's go against Mr. Murthy. What is the argument given against Mr. Murthy? First, the argument that we discussed a couple of days back. This goes against the international labor standards set by the International Labour Organization. The International Labour Organization basically has a resolution saying that you should not get a person to work for more than 8 hours a day. So India, that has ratified that resolution, cannot go against that. Secondly, the second author is trying to find loopholes in the Germany-Japan argument. The author says that after World War II, yes, Germany and German people had to work extra hours. But why? Because they faced a shortage of labor. So many people had died. The entire country was destroyed. India is not in that position. Don't compare today's India with the post-Second World War Germany, because that is just not true. Many of their youth had died. Many of their youth had injured themselves. They were not in a position to work. So there were very few people actually working, actually contributing to the economy. So they had to work extra hours. They had to rebuild all of that. India is not in that position. Rather than that, in India, if you force people to work longer hours, it could even impact unemployment. How? For example, right now you might need 2 people. Let's take a simple example. Let's assume that you have a security guard at the ATM. Okay? Now, security guard at the ATM or any ATM would need to have 24/7 security. So security guard should be there 24 hours. Now, if a security guard has an 8-hour shift, then for 24 hours you need 3 security guards, right? If you have an 8-hour shift of a security guard, then in one day to guard the ATM 24 hours, you need 3 different guards. One guard will work for 8 hours, and the next guard will come for next 8 hours, and the next guard will come for the next 8 hours. Now imagine a situation where you tell the security guard that no, for the purpose of nation building, you have to work for 12 hours, not 8 hours. So what will happen as a result of this? Now you would need only 2 guards to work for a 24-hour shift and not 3 guards. Are you understanding? So when you increase the number of working hours forcefully, you are also pushing people towards unemployment. This is the argument given here. If you look at the present situation, most countries around the world do not work 70 hours a week as suggested by Mr. Murthy. He says that in Germany, it's a 34-hour work week. Japan has 37-hour work week. Even if you look at our neighboring countries, Pakistan 47 hours, Bangladesh 47 hours, Nepal 40, India averages 48. Because again, if you basically remove the multinational companies, the formal sector in India, in the informal sector where most of India is employed, it is still a 6 days a week work. Saturday, Sunday off is a concept that very few people enjoy in India because they work at multinational companies. But if you are working in the informal sector, in India, we still have only 1 day off in a week at max and not really 2 days off. Apart from that, on the question of India's productivity, the author again says that the question on productivity cannot be forced upon the worker. Why is it that the worker has to compensate for the lack of investment in technology? If you are expecting the worker to put in extra hours to match the productivity of Germany, why not give him the salary also that the worker of Germany gets? If the German worker has productivity in terms of getting paid about $70 per hour, while an Indian worker is paid $8 per hour, you cannot expect the same productivity. So increase the wages, have better investment, and you will automatically see better productivity in case of India. In order to compete with the other countries, again, you have to either make sure that the wages are doubled, so that we can actually compete with all those countries that you are hoping to compete with. You cannot expect people to put in extra hours without even giving them something in return. The onus of improving the productivity cannot just be on the workers. How much money is coming in from the private sector, that also has to be questioned. We discussed this a couple of days back, in fact. A couple of days back, when we had this article about the ILO reforms, we did discuss about how the private sector investment in India is not as high as it should be. Because of not having enough investment, not having enough technology, it is the workers who are being expected to compensate for that, which is not good on their behalf. India anyways has a job crisis. We anyways have very few people working in the formal sector. In the organized sector, we only have 10% of our workforce. So people working in the unorganized sector, they anyways have to work extra hard. They anyways are dependent on the number of hours that they work. So again, the reforms are required not in the number of working hours. The reforms are required in how the people work, the working condition. Reforms are required in terms of investment, in terms of improving the productivity. There are a few graphics that Hindu newspaper had published in an article a few days back. And I wanted to take you back to these. If you see here, comparing Germany, Japan and India. Why these two countries? Because these two were named by Mr. Murthy in his interview. If you look at the number of working hours, the annual working hours, how many hours in a year do individuals work? So for Germany, it is less than 1500 now. For Japan, close to, you would say, 1700 now. For India, even today is close to 2200 right now in a year that the person is working on an average. And it has remained almost stable since 1965 in India. While in Germany, Japan, it used to be high, but it has reduced considerably. So again, India should not expect its workers just to put in extra hours just to ensure that the productivity increases. If you see how much time do people in these countries spend on other activities apart from work, that also is very, very bad for India. Look at this. On sports, Indians spend the least time in comparison of the three countries. TV, radio again, least time. Other leisure activities, the most time is spent. The reason I'm laughing is that sleep. Look at the sleep pattern. It's only in sleep amongst all the other activities where Indians actually have a higher time spent. Now, I don't know who to blame for this. And apart from that, housework. This housework time anyways is expected to increase even further with Diwali around the corner. In Diwali anyways, the amount of time spent on housework increases. But again, only on these two activities do you see Indians spending more time as compared to the others. But when it comes to gaining information, other leisure activities or even sports, Indians do not really spend as much time as we should. Maybe because we just don't have enough time left after giving all that we have for our respective jobs. The next article is again on a topic that we did discuss slightly about a week back. Inauguration of a new railway link between India and Bangladesh from Agartala to Akhaura. This is the map that we had discussed earlier. So what has happened is a new railway link has been now inaugurated, which will connect Agartala in India's Tripura to Akhaura in Bangladesh. It is just a 15-kilometer long railway link, so not a very long link, but it is extremely important for two purposes. One, it will improve trade, transition, people-to-people movement from India to Bangladesh. Even more important is India is hoping to get better connectivity between Kolkata and the northeastern part of India, for example, let's say Agartala. So right now, to go from Agartala to Kolkata by train, you have to take a very long journey. This is how you have to come here. It takes a very, very long time. Now, with this railway link between Agartala and Akhaura, you can expect this railway link to be operational soon. This will allow India to have an alternate connectivity between our own two states, so that if we have to transport stuff at a much faster pace, if people have to go from one place to the other, they can do that. This railway line was inaugurated virtually by the two prime ministers on the 1st of November. Again, this railway line is not very long. It's a dual gauge line. About 6.78 kilometer is in Bangladesh. About 5.5 kilometer is towards Tripura. Now, when you go from one country to the other country, either on train or by bus or by any other mode of transportation, you have to get your stuff checked. Obviously, the other country does not want someone to come in without their stuff getting checked. There has to be an immigration station. So, for example, at airports, when you land to some other country, there's an immigration status. You have to get all your stuff checked. Similarly, for this also, Nischintpur in West Bengal, or in West Tripura, sorry, has been selected as the international immigration station. So anyone who wants to travel on this railway line would have to first get their immigration checked up at Nischintpur in West Tripura, get their stuff checked, get all the papers in order. Only then they will be allowed to get into this. Also, if you are, for example, bringing some stuff from Bangladesh to India, India to Bangladesh, there are other rules and regulations involved. There is custom duty, etc. that is involved. So they will also have a land custom station at Nischintpur to make sure that any goods that you're bringing from one place to the other get checked properly. Do remember this name, Nischintpur. This is where all the checking, etc. will take place from one to the other side. Now again, the objective of India that we are trying to achieve is to have a better connectivity, alternate connectivity between Kolkata and Tripura. At present, the time period that the train takes to travel from Agartala to Kolkata is 31 hours. More than a day. It will be cut short to 10 hours, which is a big improvement. The existing commute between the two cities is 1,581 kilometers. This will come down to 460 kilometers. So this is again a very big achievement. Now, something apart from this is happening very interestingly in Bangladesh. We did discuss this earlier as well. Bangladesh is about to have the elections, and US has been taking a keen interest in the elections. Again, we had discussed Bangladesh's ruling party is the Awami League right now. Awami League, where Sheikh Hasina is the Prime Minister. Awami League has been criticized by the US. The US is saying that they are not allowing free and fair elections. The problem that India has is, if Awami League goes out of power, if BNP comes to power, BNP is Bangladesh Nationalist Party, their leader is Zia Khalida. They have been openly critical of India. Their allies have always been critical of India. So that is why you will see a lot of inaugurations are happening between India and Bangladesh in the past few months. Because we want that before the elections happen, we inaugurate all these projects so that Awami League has a better chance of winning the election. They can tell their people, see, we had this project and that project, so vote for us. India would not want BNP to come back to power because it has not been working in India's interest for a very long time. Now, this is not the first connectivity project between India and Bangladesh. We have multiple such projects now. There are 5 broad gauge connectivity routes between the two. All of them are from West Bengal. There is the Gede railway station from West Bengal to Darsna in Bangladesh. There is Benapole to Petrapole. There is Singhabad in West Bengal to Rohanpur. Then we have Radhikapur to Barol and Haldibari in West Bengal to Chilahati in Bangladesh. Again, all these railway connections that India has right now to Bangladesh originate from West Bengal. There is also work going on to connect the Mahi Hassan railway station in Assam to Shahbazpur in Bangladesh. So there are multiple railway links between the two sides, and this is again one that will give a boost to the bilateral trade and transport of people from one place to the other. There is considerable trade between the two sides. Stuff such as stone, food grains, china clay, gypsum, all of these are exported to Bangladesh. Now, you might not know what some of the other things about Bangladesh. For example, Dhaka has a very close connectivity with Kolkata. For example, if you're living in North India, let's say you're living in UP or maybe let's say Haryana, Punjab, there's a tendency, for example, if there's a big function in your family, there's a wedding function, many people go to Delhi just for shopping purposes and then they come back because the idea is that you will get better stuff in Delhi. Do you know, in Dhaka, influential families, when they have to go for shopping, they take a flight. Similarly, they come to Kolkata, they do all their shopping, all their festivity shopping, and then they go back in the evening in the flight. There have even been instances, and this is all recorded, there have even been instances of these influential families in Dhaka come into Kolkata to watch a movie, an Indian movie that might not have released in Bangladesh, watch this, have a good time, and then in the evening take flight and go back. So the two sides, India and Bangladesh, have a lot of people to people connect. It's not something odd that is happening from Agartala to Akhaura. There has been a lot of connection between the two sides. Just that when you open these connections through train, you allow many more people to travel who could not have been able to afford maybe air travel. All these are railway links that we have between the two sides. For India, it is extremely, extremely critical because it allows us to bypass the Siliguri corridor. As you know, this narrow piece of land, Siliguri corridor, joins our northeastern state to the other parts of the country. This area is extremely narrow and is always in danger because of Chinese presence here, and we have always wanted alternate connectivity to our own northeastern states through Bangladesh. With this railway line, it may be possible for us to have that. If you look at the two sides, India and Bangladesh, the trade that we have, again the number is not very high, but it is not a number that you can ignore. For example, India's export to Bangladesh is about $8 billion from April to November 2022. Bangladesh's first nuclear power plant is being built right now with the help of Russia and India in a place called Rupur. The two sides have been exchanging cargoes continuously. Bangladesh has also become the hub of merchandise. A lot of multinational companies manufacture their shoes, clothes, apparels, etc. in Bangladesh, which are again then imported to India. India provides duty-free access to Bangladesh on all the tariff lines except tobacco and alcohol under the free trade agreement that has been signed as a part of SAARC. The two sides in fact launched the trade transition rupee as well. So the two sides do not depend on dollar. They can deal in each other's currencies as well, which is a big booster for the bilateral trade between the two sides. The next article that we have is on the problem of the deep fakes. What are deep fakes? These are photos or videos generated with the help of AI, where you will see someone else's photo morphed on someone else, or you will see artificially a video is created where a person is saying something, giving a speech, etc. These are some of the biggest threats that have emerged for the governments in the past few months. The reason why it is in the news is a couple of days back, you would have seen in the social media, a couple of celebrities, Katrina Kaif, Rashmika Mandana, these actresses, their videos, their fake videos rather were circulating online, which got a lot of reaction from people around the country. This is not the first time something like this happened. A few years back, there was a deep fake video of Barack Obama that came out where he was speaking against Donald Trump, which was not a true video, but it turned out to be a deep fake video. But it was extremely, extremely real looking. It was very difficult to identify whether the video is real or not. These are deep fakes. Now the problem is, with the emergence of AI, with the emergence of better technology year on year, it is extremely difficult to curtail and keep a track of these deep fakes, of how to identify what is fake and what is not. It has always been challenging. In this case of these videos of actresses coming out, the Indian government has announced or has given direction to the social media intermediaries, that is Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc., that these videos have to be deleted within 24 hours of a complaint being filed. This is not something new. This is in fact a part of the IT rules of 2021. The IT rules of 2021 say that if any deepfake video is circulating on your platform, if someone complains, check whether the video is authentic or not. If the video is not authentic, within 24 hours, it has to be deleted. Now again, deepfakes is not a very old phenomena. It has been in existence since 2017. The problem is it is becoming better and better and better. You see new technology platforms coming up year on year. In fact, there are platforms which can take your voice. In your voice, you can basically adapt a song. For example, right now, if you watch Instagram, etc., there is a famous version of our Prime Minister. In Mr. Modi's voice, there are certain songs that are being sung. So they are using his voice to sing certain songs that exist already. So again, all these are examples of deep fakes. And it is not just a problem in India. In fact, this has become a big problem around the world. A few months back, when the wrestlers are protesting on Jantar Mantar, if you remember, they were arrested. There was a photo that was circulated that the wrestlers are smiling and laughing in the bus when they are being arrested by the police. It again turned out to be a fake photo. It was a deep fake photo. It was very difficult to identify. That makes it extremely challenging. This technology basically creates new images and videos using a machine learning technique that is called GAN, Generative Adversarial Network. So what they do is they basically try and detect the facial expression of the person, the mannerisms of the person, the voice tone, the movements, how they talk, and then they ape it, they copy it, and they basically bring it to some other personality. And it becomes extremely difficult for you to identify whether the person is true or whether the video is authentic or not. In India, the existing rules about the deep fakes can be seen in the IT rules of 2021. It says that all the content reported that is fake has to be taken down by the intermediary within 36 hours. Other countries also have similar rules. EU is known to have the toughest of these rules. They have guidelines for creation of independent network of fact checkers who can check these facts, who can check these videos. They require the tech companies also, such as Google, Meta that runs Facebook, X that runs Twitter. They also have to take measures to stop all these deep fakes and take action against these fake accounts. China, US, all of these nations have made laws against deep fake. The problem with deep fakes is it can be a big security threat. Just imagine you see a video of a very renowned politician saying to its supporters to indulge in violence. Just imagine what an impact it would have. A person who is very famous, who has a following of lakhs and crores, if that person's fake video is made out, telling the people to go and attack others, how devastating it can be. This is where deep fake video are very challenging. These are big threats that the nations around the world are trying to curb. This is why the nations want to regulate the use of AI. This is why many people have spoken that AI cannot be left free to be used for anything. That's why recently there was an AI summit that we discussed in Bletchley Park near London, where the nations around the world, the leaders came up to discuss how to regulate the use of AI. Just to remind you, there was a declaration that was signed called the Bletchley Declaration. The Bletchley Declaration was about how to curtail the use of AI, how to regulate the use of AI around the world. The AI or deep fake can be misused to spread false information. Again, the Barack Obama example that I gave you, his fake video was circulating where he was criticizing Donald Trump. It can be used for intimidation, for even fabricating evidence in case of judiciary, for tarnishing someone's reputation, even for financial fraud. You might have a situation where, many banks now do a KYC online. They would actually basically have a video call, they'll do a KYC on the phone, and the phone will detect, the camera will detect your facial recognition technique, and they will be able to certify whether you are the owner of the account or not. These kind of deep fake technologies can very easily be used to bypass all these KYCs, and that becomes extremely challenging. Now we move on to some news stories from the prelims exam point of view. First one from the front page, the ethics committee has concluded its investigation. They have recommended that Moitra, the member of the Lok Sabha from the TMC, should be disqualified. This is their recommendation. Again, the recommendation is not binding just because they have said this. It has to be voted upon. Now, I'm sure all of you by now know what the case is about. Those who are new here, those who don't know the case is, there were allegations put on her that the questions she was asking in the Lok Sabha in the question hour, she was taking money from an industrialist and asking questions on his behalf. The questions have to be submitted on an online portal. The ID password is given to each and every member of parliament. Allegations are that she shared her ID password with that businessman friend and took money in return. That was the entire allegation. It was being probed by the ethics committee. This is called the cash for query scam. The committee has said that we would suggest the member to be disqualified. Now it will be put to vote when the winter session begins. If the House, that is a Lok Sabha, she is a member of the Lok Sabha, if they vote in the favor of the recommendation, then she will be disqualified. Now the interesting part is, ever since the Ethics Committee has come into picture, this is the first time that they have recommended expulsion of a parliamentarian. Please remember, other committees such as the Privilege Committee have recommended disqualification of members earlier, but for the Ethics Committee, this is the first ever case of any recommendation of a member being disqualified. Also, the allegations are that the ID password she shared with the industrialist from the Hiranandani group, that he himself put the questions in the portal. The Ministry of Information or Electronics and Information Technology also says that Ms. Moitra's login was accessed from Dubai 47 times. Means there was someone who was accessing the portal on her behalf. Who was he or who was she, that remains to be seen. We have discussed earlier also about the Ethics Committee of the Lok Sabha. This is not a very old committee. It's a committee that is separate, or that is an individual committee in both the houses. In Lok Sabha, it has 15 members. Rajya Sabha's Ethics Committee would have 10 members, which are appointed by the presiding officer of the House. What is their job? To look into ethical conduct and the moral conduct of the members of the parliament, to look into any complaints of unethical behavior by a Lok Sabha member that is referred by the speaker, and see if there are allegations that have been imposed or allegations put on the member of the parliament are true or not. Now, this ethics committee again is not very old. It became a permanent committee only in 2015. We had this committee in the ad hoc manner in 2000, but it only became a permanent committee in 2015. The reason was that there was not a need felt for this. Similar kind of cases earlier were taken by the Privilege Committee. But the Privilege Committee still exists. Ethics Committee has also been formed as a permanent committee in 2015. This is how the committee works. The complaint against a Lok Sabha MP can be initiated by another Lok Sabha member of parliament only and no one else. A person can complain against any Lok Sabha MP, but it has to be submitted along with the evidence. If the Lok Sabha MP himself complained, then the affidavit is not required. Also, the speaker would have a major role to play. The speaker would decide whether this question or this investigation has to be referred to the committee or not. The committee does not entertain complaints on the basis of media reports or when a matter is in the judiciary. They would only hear complaints when the speaker tells them to. They would have a prima facie inquiry. Prima facie inquiry means not going into the deep details of it, just looking at the facts on the face of it and deciding. Then they will make recommendations after evaluating the complaint. They submit the report to the speaker and then it will be taken up by the House. So the last step has happened now. Their recommendation has come in. Their recommendation is that the member of parliament should be removed. Whether or not she is removed remains to be seen. Next is a news from Nagaland. Finally, Nagaland has decided to give the 1/3 women reservation in urban local bodies, that is the municipalities. Now you might be surprised, did Nagaland not have this reservation so far? No. So the 74th Amendment Act did say that there has to be 1/3 women reservation in the municipalities, but Nagaland did not agree to it. It had become a very big issue in Nagaland. Why? Nagaland says that they have been given special status under Article 371A. Article 371A tells Nagaland that your old customs, rituals, traditions can continue. No law of the parliament will be made against your existing customs, rituals. Nagaland says that as per our own rituals, as per our old customs, we do not allow women to be in the place of or the position of power. We do not allow the women to decide how the laws will be made. So we don't want any women reservation. In fact, the matter had become so violent that people had even died in the violence for urban local bodies. For many years, we did not even have urban local body polls in Nagaland. Supreme Court also had to step in. Supreme Court had asked Nagaland to make this law to give 1/3 women reservation. And now, adhering to the Supreme Court order, Nagaland has agreed to give 1/3 reservation. However, there are some changes. First, the 1/3 reservation does not include reservation at the chairperson level. Also, taxes on buildings, land, etc. have not been included. So the urban local bodies would not be able to impose taxes on land or building, etc. And the 1/3 women reservation is only for the members of the urban local bodies, not the chairperson of the urban local bodies. As I said, this is a long dispute. It has been close to 20 years now that the last municipal elections were held. Because whenever the state tried to have elections with that 1/3 reservation, there was so much violence that elections were just not possible. In fact, there have been killings. There have been 2 people who have died in these violent protests. So much so that the chief minister had to resign because of all these agitations. In 2017, there was an attempt by the state government to give this reservation to women, but again, they were not successful. The women groups, on the other hand, have been demanding the reservation, saying that it is their right. Finally, the Supreme Court had to step in, and that is how they have been able to get this reservation. Again, the gist of the entire debate is the Article 371A, which says that Parliament cannot make laws about the religious social practice of the Nagas, their traditional laws, how they solve legal problem, land disputes, etc. They will decide on their own. The government, the Parliament will not do that. Nagaland was the only state where the urban local bodies did not have a seat reserved for women. Now, the thankful or the good news is that now women reservation is allowed even in this last state as well. The last article is that the 2+2 dialogue between India and the US is now on way. We have our Indian Foreign Minister and Defense Minister meeting their counterparts from the US that have come to India. This is what the 2+2 dialogue is. Now, it is coming at a very interesting time, a time where Israel and Hamas are fighting this war, where thousands of people are being killed. This is a time where the two sides are meeting, discussing their strategies, synergies, how they can work together to bring peace around the world. Also, India is looking to sign 2 very big deals, finalize these deals with the US. First, the 31 MQ-9B high altitude drones, and second, more importantly, is the deal of GE F414 jet engines that India wants to manufacture in India. Both of these are deals that have been discussed for some time now. Discussions will go on even further in this process as well. India wants to use this engine to use in our own Tejas aircraft and also export this to the other parts of the world as well. This 2+2 meeting will further expedite this process going forward. Also remember, in the G20 summit that recently happened, the Indian Prime Minister invited Joe Biden, the American President, to be the Republic Day chief guest in India in the upcoming Republic Day. Whether or not he comes in, it remains to be seen. The invitation has not been accepted so far. India has this 2+2 dialogue with other nations as well. US is the country that we just discussed. Australia, Japan and Russia. So basically Quad countries and Russia. These are the countries with which we have this 2+2 dialogue. Again, 2+2 means foreign and defense minister of the two sides meeting to discuss top level issues. This brings us to the end of today's discussion. Here are a couple of practice questions for you to try and write answers to. Once this session comes to an end, do move over to our Telegram channel to attempt the quiz based on the topics that we discussed to revise everything. I'll see you tomorrow at 10 a.m. for the next session of the Hindu Newspaper Analysis. Have a good day ahead. Bye-bye. Jai Hind.